Our Story Production presents The Road to Our Story, spotlighting an in-depth look at many of The Road to Our Story magazine's featured articles. So get ready, for you're about to travel on The Road to Our Story.
Hello, I'm Jason Howland, and welcome to Speaking of Health, a place to help you learn how to live a longer and healthier life. Imagine you or a loved one is faced with a serious or life-threatening illness. You want to relieve the pain and improve your quality of life, in some cases in the small amount of time that is left. While traditional clinical medicine can't cure you of your illness, palliative medicine can help you live your life better in the face of that illness. Our guests today on Speaking of Health are Dr. Corey Ingram, Palliative Care Medical Director from Mayo Clinic Health System and also Assistant Professor of Palliative Medicine at Mayo Clinic, and also here to share her own personal story of a family member's experience with palliative care is Linda Sandberg from Sherburne. Thanks for joining us both on Speaking of Health.
Thank you, Jason.
Well, Dr. Ingram, first off, could you start by explaining what palliative care is? Because a lot of people probably don't know what it is.
That's exactly right, Jason. Thank you for asking, and thanks for having this segment on palliative care. I think your intro actually stated it quite well about if a loved one had a serious illness. And in palliative care, we are a team of people who focuses on one thing, and that is helping a patient and their family live well in the face of serious illness. We tend to four main areas of their life: their physical suffering, social suffering, emotional suffering, and spiritual suffering. And as a team, we try and help them live as well as they can in the face of serious illness.
You know, a lot of people have heard of hospice, I'm sure, but a lot haven't heard of palliative care. Yeah. What is the difference between the two?
Hospice care was developed in the 1980s in this country to deliver palliative care to dying patients. Palliative medicine has really risen to the forefront in the last years as people are living with serious illnesses for a lot longer periods of time. And palliative medicine is the deliverance of palliative care for people who are living with a serious illness, not necessarily dying from it. And so we provide very similar services to hospice, but we take care of patients who are recently diagnosed throughout the illness course. Some people actually get better, and sometimes we care for people even as they are dying. But a lot of people also at some point in time transition to receiving palliative care through hospice in the last few weeks of life as well.
Well, Linda, if you could, please share a little bit of the story of your sister and the experience that she and your family had with palliative care program at Mayo Clinic Health System.
My sister Vicki Rosenbergs suffered from cancer, ovarian cancer, for about 7 years. I'd never heard of palliative care. And in August this last year, my sister was hospitalized in Mankato with a bowel obstruction and actually a bursting of the bowel, and was very, very ill. And while we were there, we were contacted by the palliative care team and asked if they would like us to come and visit with them. And Vicki was so sick she could hardly even respond. So she asked if I would sit in with her. I had no idea what palliative care was. So it was very interesting to me, and I was just amazed by these people. They come in as a team, they're extremely caring, loving, and the 4 points that he talked about that they try to cover, they're wonderful. Vicki had been suffering from some conditions, and they immediately, because of their vast experience with people going through those types of situations, said, we need to do this, 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 and this for you. And that aided her tremendously. It took her out of a lot of pain. A lot of the symptoms which were causing her a lot of problems were remedied within 1 or 2 days. And this was right before my sister's son was getting married, a week before he was getting married. And they had said all along, we will get you to that wedding. And I would never have dreamed they could have accomplished that goal. And they did. And she looked gorgeous. And it was in large part thanks to the love and care and support that they gave her.
And I understand that Vicki was very passionate about palliative care. Even before she was diagnosed with cancer, she was well aware what palliative care was and what it does for people, right?
Yes, she was. I did not know that. She worked at the Foundation for the Medelia Hospital, the director, and as part of that, she was looking for a grant to get palliative care into the Medelia area, and actually worked with someone from Mankato to get the grant that got this wonderful program into the area. So when it ended up that was using their services, she was just thrilled. And that's why when I was asked if I would come and speak on this, it's like, yes, because this was something that my sister was very passionate about. And I know she's up in heaven going, yes, yes, get it down to Fairmont, get it everywhere else you can, because it is such a wonderful program.
Thank you.
You talked about the palliative care team helping her with her symptoms, but I would imagine there was many other things that the team helped with as well, right?
Yes. I mean, they were there for Vicki medically, like he said, emotionally, spiritually, which was wonderful. But they also met with the family. First with my mom and dad and Vicki and I was amazed how intuitive they were to what my parents were going through, what Vicki was going through, what we were going through. And my dad had really struggled with Vicki's situation, and it really helped him. When he came out of that meeting, he says, wow, they're wonderful. And then later on, they met with the whole family, and we have a pretty good-sized family with Vicki's sons and, the rest of us. And rather than having us all drive up to Mankato, they said, you know what, we'll come down to Sherburne. So they took their time and came down and met with us in Sherburne. And they're so patient, you never felt like, okay, they're looking at their watches, I need to get going. They would give us whatever time was needed and explain things so well. And they did a great job with a topic that's very difficult. Her sons were very nervous about meeting with them and discussing this kind of taboo subject, and it really helped Vicki too, because it's a kind of meeting that she'd wanted to have with her boys and her family, and they helped have that discussion and make it easier for all of us.
Yet nobody knows how to deal with, a serious or life-threatening illness. How do you deal with that? And having experts there to help you and guide you along, I would imagine would be very, very helpful, right?
Yeah, you just can't explain how much support that is, to have them understand, like I said, what you're going through, provide resources, say, this is probably what you're thinking. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, how'd they know that? And I didn't want to say that in front of Vicki, or Vicki didn't want to say some things in front of us. But because of the support that they had, Vicki could say some things that she wanted to say. Yeah, it was just great for her, like you said, because she wanted to have the conversations. They're difficult. She didn't know how to do it. And with your guys' help, it was great.
Well, Dr. Ingram, can you talk a little bit more about your team, what it consists of, and some of the things that you provide for patients and their families like Vicki's?
Sure. So I'm really glad, I think this really allows us to showcase what we do. And we have on our team a nurse practitioner, social worker, chaplain. We also have volunteers. We would love to have healing arts practitioners in the future as well, doing creative art therapy, writing therapy, music therapy. And I think if you can envision being seriously ill, if you can envision being in the hospital has really been unable to control three main things that go on when you're hospitalized: boredom, isolation, loneliness. And so we also have a team of volunteers who come and help people who are in our hospital or at home or wherever they may be, to lighten the load on their family as well as help that person in the midst of what they're dealing with. Recently we had a young lady who wanted to she wanted to do some handwork. Turned out she wanted to do latch hook rug. Volunteers went and got it. They brought it in the hospital. They made her hospitalization better in the face of serious illness. So our team is broad and trying to be all-encompassing.
Well, I've heard you refer to palliative care as a cloak, and that's actually what palliative means, right?
Yeah, that's the direct translation. Mm-hmm. And I think if we really look carefully at people who are seriously ill and their families, I think one word that comes to mind for all of them is fragile. The situation is fragile and very tender for all of them. And what they need is somebody to cloak, to really embrace them as a whole, helping them through the situations they're in, from home to hospital to, Rochester and back, really helping guide them through our system and help them live well in the face of serious illness.
And at this point, the palliative care team for Mayo Clinic Health Systems region in southwest Minnesota is based out of Mankato, but the goal is to spread the program to other sites, including in Fairmont and some of the other locations, right?
That's exactly right. We're looking at models of care so that we can have palliative care available to absolutely every patient within the Mayo Clinic Health System. So anywhere in this region of the Mayo Clinic Health System, as well as our Wisconsin sites and the area around Rochester, palliative medicine is clearly an initiative in which we feel so strongly about that we want every patient who is within distance of a Mayo Clinic Health System site to receive palliative care services.
And in Fairmont already, there's been a good start to get that program going, right?
That's exactly right. The Cole family, as you may have seen, opened their hearts. I called it a gift truly of compassion. They both have lived through a spouse dying, being seriously ill, being in Rochester, being in their local community, and they've experienced how some of the things we've talked about, the loneliness, the boredom, just the sheer unawareness of how sick their loved one was, and then the end of their loved one's life. And they recognize the need for palliative care, helping people who are living with these serious illnesses transition throughout the healthcare system and be well cared for at the same time.
So, Dr. Ingram, tell me a little bit more about the patients that your team takes care of in palliative care.
I'd be glad to. I think Vicki was a prime example, a young mother, wife with an advanced cancer. We take care of people of all ages, We take care of, this year we've taken care of people in their 20s. Certainly there's specialized palliative care for children as well. We don't see a great deal of those children in this area of the state. They're usually taken care of in the cities. So we do take care of people of all ages, young and old. And people we take care of, they're living with a serious illness that affects their daily life. Oftentimes it's hard for them to can fulfill their regular daily activities. It's hard for them to work. We try and help them get back to work. It's hard for them, just to complete the things that most of us frankly take for granted prior to that day in which we have a serious illness. Some people might experience as well that, and I actually tell people this, I say, we're kind of like a bad rash. We keep coming back. Once you got us, you're stuck with us. Mm-hmm. My social worker has said, well, you might want to say we're like a tattoo. It sounds better. But I think that's the experience of some patients and families, because once you are caring for somebody that's seriously ill, the connection, it's just natural. It stays. It's durable. And I think your family experienced the same thing. Even when Vicki officially was in hospice care, we were in Mankato, but we weren't far away.
Definitely, most definitely. While she was technically under the palliative care umbrella alone, we would have issues. My sister was very ill, like I said, and I'd call their team and say, we need to get her this doctor, and we can't get her in, or we need this medication. Okay, we'll take care of it, and they did. I can't even think of all the things that they help us take care of. Once she transitioned into hospice, they didn't drop us. They were still there, and there were times that, because of all the different medical professionals involved, we had some concerns about her treatment, and the way they had treated her was so wonderful. So I called the team, hey, can you help with this? Yep, and they did, no matter when. They were there helping us. My sister passed away in October, and I just got a call from Ellen from your team a couple weeks ago. So the caring and support doesn't stop.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece to mention. If you think about people who are cared for with hospice care, only about 30% of people that die with hospice care. We take care of people who are dying in palliative care as well, and we also provide bereavement services going forward. So for all those people that never provided professional bereavement services before, they're now providing them through palliative care as well, in addition to hospice care. So people that never got into hospice for whatever reason are now also getting bereavement services through palliative care as well.
I can only imagine for the family, that's got to be so reassuring to have that team behind you through this whole journey.
Oh, definitely. My other sister and I really cared for my sister that died quite a bit in those last few months, and we were just so thankful that we had them for a resource and continue to have them for a resource.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I'd like to thank our guests today, Dr. Corey Ingram and Linda Sandberg, for joining us today on Speaking of Health. Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
And have a great day, everyone, and be healthy.
Hi there, Sam.
Hey Dad, I have a question.
Another question?
Yeah, what are you doing?
Oh, well, I'm reviewing some of our viewers' favorite segments.
Did you find anything?
Well, yes, I did find some additional segments people are sure to enjoy about some very interesting things. Take a look.
Our Story Productions presents the Kakupo Morning Show, where we weed out the big stories from throughout Sweet Swine County with Bobby Ray and Sally Sue.
Thank you and welcome to the Kakupo Morning Show. And I have to say, Sally Sue, it is really good to be back.
Oh, it sure is, Bobby Ray. I don't know about you, but oh, honey, I had a fantastic
I'm glad to hear it. South was good to you.
Yes, it
oh,
was
that's
very
outstanding.
good. You know.
Well, Sally Sue, I think this is a good time to tell you and our fans out there that I really wasn't on vacation.
What were you doing?
I've been in negotiations with KLUK TV on our contracts.
Wait a minute.
Yep,
wait, I didn't realize that we had a meeting.
Well, we didn't. I had a meeting well, how shall I say? My Mr. Olson, or shall I say my friend, Cousin John.
Oh, your friend.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, he asked me to join him at his lake home up on Swine Lake, and we got to become very good pals, and
really?
we negotiated what I think is a very fair and equitable settlement in our contract negotiations going forward in the new year. So.
Oh,
yeah.
good. Well, so what happened in your negotiation? Did we get a raise? Did I get a dressing room?
Well, just, I think you're going to be very, very pleased. Yes, you're going to have a dressing room.
Awesome.
It is, yes, I'm telling you.
Oh,
I negotiate
excited.
hard. You will be using Cousin John's dressing room when he's not in it.
I get to share
A dressing room.
A dressing room.
Right.
With
well,
Cousin John.
Well, not with him. You get to use it when he's not there. So, that gives you almost star status.
So
yeah.
I did get a
Yes,
dressing
absolutely,
room. I
absolutely.
see. Okay.
And there's no need to thank me, okay? Because there is more.
I can only imagine. Did you get a raise?
Well, sort of. From now on, we are going to get paid twice as much, okay?
Okay.
For every show we do.
Oh, that's awesome.
I thought it was.
That's
I was pretty
awesome.
tickled with that. Cousin John said he hopes we will enjoy it during our time off.
During our time off.
Yeah, well-
we're not hosting every week.
Well, no, but we will be able to pick the guest hosts, okay?
Oh, that's good. Okay,
And,
okay.
I think all in all it's going to work out well. We get to submit stories from out in the field and put those in. But as you know, there have been some rumblings in the network and the possibility of you and I traveling upward and onward. And so I'm just paving that pathway for us, if you will.
So they'd be kind of like Bobby Ray's Weekend Adventures.
Pretty darn close to that, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring out this morning's guest.
Yes.
From the county of Rock in the city of Laverne, we'd like to welcome Terry Golden.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Welcome, Terry. It's such a pleasure to
Absolutely.
have you here.
Yes.
My pleasure.
I understand that you're with an organization called Honor Flight. What is that?
Honor Flight is a national program that covers the entire country, and our sole goal is to bring World War II veterans to Washington, D.C. to see the memorial that was built and dedicated in 2004. There are probably 160 or 70 flight hubs, which we are one in Laverne, Minnesota, representing Southwest Minnesota.
Really?
It's an organization that we put together, our hub in probably late 2009. In November, we formed the hub mostly to bring about 14 to 15, maybe 16 veterans in Rock County who had not been able to see the memorial and weren't sure that they were going to get to for a variety of reasons. April 30th, we flew our first 110 veterans to Washington, D.C.
That's outstanding.
Nice.
And
That's
we
outstanding.
have our second flight scheduled and planned for October 1, so we'll be taking another 110.
That's
So
great.
It's awesome.
Wonderful, wonderful. So it began, can you tell us a little bit how the organization began?
Certainly.
What-
And, you
what
know, it's really an
prompted it?
interesting story. In 2004, when the memorial was built and dedicated, we had already lost 65% of the World War II veterans
Oh,
in this
really?
country.
I didn't realize that.
It is amazing. In 2005, a retired Air Force captain, I think it was, a 27-year veteran, was hired by the Department of Veteran Affairs to run a small clinic in Springfield, Ohio.
Okay.
While he was attending to his clients, he would ask these gentlemen or ladies if they thought that they would ever have a chance to see the memorial, and most of the responses were, well, I hope so. I think so, if somebody can take me. And it would go on like this, and the next year he asked, did you ever have a chance to see your memorial? And he said, the first guy that he asked that question to said, no, I wasn't able to. And asked why, and he says, well, I just couldn't get there. My family couldn't afford to take me. And he was also a pilot. He has a private pilot's license. And he said, could I take you? Would you go if I would take you? And he said the guy broke down and cried.
Oh, my.
And that started it. He took the gentleman to Washington, D.C., took care of him for a day, flew him there at no cost to him.
Oh, that's
Those
great.
are the two premises of honor flight. First, there's no cost to the veteran, and you have to take care of them while they are there. Well, he knew that he had something going on, so he invited pilots from his association to also fly with him. And they took 12 airplanes and
Oh,
took
my goodness.
in one to two in each one of them and flew to Washington, D.C., and that was the first inaugural flight.
That
And
just
by
gives
the
me
end, that was in May of 2005, and by August, the demand was so great that they started using commercial airlines. Last year, we took somewhere between 35 and 37,000 veterans to Washington, D.C. across the country. This year, it probably doubled.
Goodness.
Wow. Now that brings me to the obvious question.
Sure.
This costs
Yes, something.
I mean, major expenses. How much does it cost, and how are you doing your fundraising?
Oh, it costs somewhere around, I'm going to give an approximate number because it can vary a little
Right.
bit
Sure,
on each
sure.
flight, depending on the charter flight that you can find at the time. Approximately $125,000 to make one trip.
My goodness.
The trip is free to the veterans.
True.
So that puts a burden on us to raise a lot of money. We raise the money through lots and lots of fundraisers.
Sure.
We have corporate sponsorships that we develop, a $3,000, a $5,000, and a $10,000 sponsorship. We have a lot of bake sales. We have a lot of steak dinners.
Great.
We had a bunch of people in Nobles County jump in a 10-foot square hole in the middle of January in the Lake Okabena this last winter and raised over $40,000 that day. But just a couple of weeks ago, they had a fundraiser in Worthington, and they had some people that volunteered to be tasered by the local law enforcement.
To raise money?
And to raise monies.
I think I'd jump in the lake. What do you think?
Yeah, the lake
I mean, there's
The lake
there's
has
a
more
variety
appeal.
of things.
Yes.
We started out selling a little button, $5 donation for
Sure.
a button, and we've raised a fair amount of money just selling buttons, but it also allowed us to be recognized. Our hub supports 4 counties. We had 4 counties that were involved in raising the money, doing the marketing, and now we've actually expanded our second flight. If you were to draw a line from the corner of Minnesota where Rock County is, and go to Fairmont, because we have Fairmont veterans that are
Right.
traveling with us
Oh,
on our
good,
first
good.
flight and our second flight, and then draw a line all the way up to the northwest part of the state where Wheaton, Minnesota is. We're covering all of that area.
Now, how does a veteran, how do they apply, or how do they become involved on
Good
the honor
question.
flight?
It's very simple. They have to fill out an application
Okay.
and send it to us. The application can be found on our website, which we'll show, lavernechamber.com. There's a link on there to the honor flight, and the veterans application is there, and also for those that want to go along as a guardian.
That's what I was going to ask.
There's
How does a guardian?
There's an application for the guardian. They fill out the information. We match up. Some guardians want to go with a parent or a grandparent. Likewise, the parent or grandparent, like a son or
Sure.
Guardians, there is a donation that we ask them to make to fly with us. It's part of our fundraising.
Okay.
It's $800 for a guardian to fly with us. Most of them that fly say it was the best thing I ever did. It's
Do
the
they
best
all-
$800 I've ever
Do
spent.
they also stay with the veterans at the hotel, or how does that work?
Sometimes they do.
Okay.
It depends on if they've requested to be with one.
Sure.
Then they'll probably be roomed together.
Okay.
Could it be dad and a son
Okay.
or a mother and a daughter?
This is just an outstanding.
It is.
I think it's probably one of the greatest things that we can do to honor what I consider to be the greatest generation that this country has ever had.
Well,
And I think it's
I
just
happen to agree with
wonderful.
you.
I think it's
Yeah.
just wonderful.
Well, thank you, and we are very grateful. And what I see when these veterans come back home again.
Oh.
I mean, and the 2 days that they spend there, they've changed.
They're just elated, I have to believe,
are.
that they were
Sure,
there.
sure.
And
Most veterans are very quiet. That
Sure.
generation didn't talk
No,
about
they didn't.
the war.
No.
They came home and they built a society
right.
and communities for us to live in. When they get to Washington, D.C., most of them will tell you, I can't talk about this. And they're very, very quiet. But by the second day, on Saturday morning when we take them to the World War II Memorial, something happens.
Sure.
And all of a sudden they are with people that understand where they've been,
Sure.
what they've been living with for 60 years, and they start to talk and
Yes.
they start sharing. And I have said for months now that this is a huge healing process.
Sure it is.
For
Oh,
these
yeah.
folks.
Do many of these veterans meet up with people that they may have served with?
They do.
That they didn't otherwise know that?
They do.
Do you know what I'm?
I know
because I got
exactly
to
what
believe
you're
that there
saying.
are groups that come in from different hubs during the same period of time,
That were
correct?
in the same units.
But I mean, you might have different hubs coming into Washington, D.C. at the same time?
We had 9.
Okay, so
9
you see what
hubs
I'm
from
saying.
across the country.
Yeah.
Can I tell you one
Oh,
story?
please,
One
absolutely,
Please,
yes.
please.
There are actually 2 little stories. One is we were sitting at the Iwo Jima Memorial,
Okay.
the Marine Corps Memorial. So it was a very warm day in April, and we were sitting. We had about 4 or 5 wheelchairs with veterans, and we were standing just watching the memorial. And 3 women came up to us. One was probably my age, one was maybe 30, and one was probably a teenager, or young, maybe middle schooler. And the 30-year-old girl came up and started talking to the veterans and said, "Are any of you Dutch?" And then they thought it was a joke, and it wasn't a joke. She said, "Well, I just want to tell you that because of you, because of what you did in liberating the prisoners," she says, "I'm here alive today. I'm here today to thank you for that because you saved my grandparent.
Oh.
I am here today to thank you." And we saw the same thing. We do a mail call with our veterans. We have schools in our areas write letters. The elementary, middle school kids, some high school, they write letters because that was a big deal in World War II to receive mail.
Absolutely,
Oh, definitely.
yes.
Yeah.
So we have a mail call, and there was a letter from a little Jewish boy that said exactly the same thing, and it just tears at
Oh,
your
yeah,
heart.
absolutely.
Oh, what
But on Friday night, we have a wonderful banquet. We
Oh,
sit them
great.
all down to white tablecloth
Oh,
banquet
that's
at the
so
Westin Hotel,
Nice.
and we have military color guards come in, and we have lots of military involvement.
That's
in it.
outstanding. When is your next flight scheduled?
October 1.
October 1.
We leave on Friday, early Friday morning,
Okay.
October 1, and we are returning probably 10:30 Saturday evening.
And how many more flights are you anticipating this year?
That will be the last one this
For
year.
this year?
This
For
year.
this
Okay.
year.
And
But
then-
we fully anticipate that we will have one in the spring, probably in April like we did this year in April.
Okay.
And I'm guessing, we are kind of thinking because of the application flow, we might be getting to the end of our little geographic area.
Well, I am very impressed, and I wish you the ultimate success with this.
Well, thank you very
And
much.
hopefully every veteran that's still alive will have an opportunity to participate in this.
I sure hope so too. That's
Absolutely.
our goal too, and our wish is there.
One question. For those that might want to donate,
If there's anyone watching that would like to make a donation, you can send a check to the Laverne Chamber, just right on their honor flight, Southwest
Honor flight.
Minnesota.
well, we want to thank you, Terry, for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
And we wish you the most success, and we again thank the veterans for what they've done for our country.
Absolutely.
And hope they thoroughly enjoy the trip. So.
And they do. Thank you so much.
Well, and we also want to thank you, our viewers, for joining us today on the Kakupo Morning Show, where we weed out the big stories from throughout Sweet Swine County and beyond. So until next time, folks, that's all for now. Bye-bye.
So there you have it, Samo. 2 great segments on the road to our story.